Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Matt, and today we're brewing a dry Irish Stout with Kveik yeast. I wasn't planning on using Kveik for this beer, but I actually have a party coming up, so I need to get a beer out quick. So I figure why not use Lutra Kveik for this batch. So this will be hopefully a 48-hour fermentation, so stay tuned to see how that goes. But anyway, guys, we're gonna first go over the recipe in Beersmith 3, and then we're gonna jump right into the brew day. So we are planning a 4.2 gallon batch for the dry Irish Stout. We're doing something different. We're gonna try sparging. I've never sparged a batch with the Clawhammer system, but I am interested to see the efficiency difference with adding a sparging step. I'm hoping somewhere between 5 and 10% on the efficiency, but we will see how it goes with this extra step. For the malt bill, it's a pretty standard stout recipe. We have 73% Maris Otter, 13% Flaked Barley, 10% Roasted Barley, and 3% Chocolate Malt. For our hops, we're using good old EKGs for a 60-minute edition and a 30-minute edition. And for the yeast, we're using Lutra Kveik. As I mentioned, I need to get this done in a few days, so we're hoping this will do well. For the starter information, it only needs 124 billion cells, and the pack has about 144 billion, so we should be all set there with no starter. For the water chemistry, we have almost a 2-to-1 sulfate to chloride. Next, we can jump into the brew day. We first measured out our strike and sparge volumes and measured out our brewing salts. Then we double crushed the malts. After the salts were dissolved, we mashed in. After 15 minutes, we took a pH reading and it measured out too high. Our target was 5.2, so we added another 1.6 milliliters of lactic acid. After a 60-minute mash and a 10-minute mash out, we raised the grain basket up and heated our sparge water to 170 degrees. Sparging with Clawhammer was very nice. I was able to keep about an inch of water above the grain basket without spilling out on the side. After we sparged, we squeezed the grains to get as much wort out as we can. We took a pre-boil gravity reading and it measured out to around 1046, which was 10 points over target. Once we hit the boil, we added 1 ounce of EKGs for 60 minutes and another ounce for 30 minutes. We also added Irish moss and yeast nutrient for 15 minutes. After the boil was completed, we started chilling the wort and we moved the wort over to the fermenter at 90 degrees. Lastly, we aerated the wort and pitched our Lutra Kveik from Omega yeast. Our OG reading measured out to around 1053, which is 12 points over target. It's pushing us way out of spec for this beer. We ended up adding a half gallon of distilled water to bring the gravity down to 1047, which was still very high but closer to spec. After 2 days at 90 degrees, we moved the beer over to the fermenter. Our ABV measured out to around 4.6%. Okay, so I got the dry Irish Stout with me here. It's been on tap now for a few days. I want to first talk about the brew day notes, and then we can talk about tasting, aroma, mouthfeel, flavor. The first thing I want to talk about for the brew day stuff is sparging. So this is the first time we've ever sparged on the Clawhammer, and it's the first time I sparged in electric brew in a bag in general. I've always done just the full volumes. So I definitely had some things I had to get used to. The first thing I had to get used to was how thick the mash was. I'm wondering if maybe because there's like 2 inches of space between the bottom of the basket and the bottom of the kettle that holds a lot of liquid. The next thing about efficiency, so I normally plan for 65% efficiency, and that's doing like double crushing, pH management, stirring the mash every 15 minutes, using a pump, using an electric system to hold the right temperature. And the best I could do is 65% with that. With this batch, I was able to do around 75% efficiency, which is definitely more appropriate to what I would expect. Anything really over 70% for me is considered a win. Maybe I can even get this closer to 80%. So it's nice to see that I can get a lot more bang for my buck. Sparging didn't add any extra time to my brew day either. Since I have to wait up for the water to heat up anyway on this 120 volt system, I had plenty of time to sparge without really interrupting my brew day at all. It did add a little bit of extra work on me though, since I had to run upstairs and heat up the kettle. It'd be nice now that I know that this works is if I had like an induction plate down here or an electric kettle to boil 2 gallons of water. So if you guys have any recommendations for cheap induction plates that can heat up like a big pot of water, or an electric kettle that's pretty cheap too, let me know. At least I'd like it to hold at least 2 gallons. So if you guys are using something for your brew house for sparging, let me know. Another quirky thing that I found odd was my Beersmith 3 didn't calculate the pH I needed to add to the sparge volume, just the water chemistry. So I kind of just had to take another pH reading after I added my sparge water to make sure my pH wasn't completely thrown off by that volume, and it measured out okay. As far as my fermentation schedule, I held 90 degrees in the fermentation chamber with an Inkbird and a heat mat for 2 days, and then that is when I racked it over to the keg, so it was 48 hours in the fermenter, and then another day to force carb. To prep for the fermentation schedule, I just made sure to aerate the beer quite a bit, and then I also added a healthy amount of yeast nutrient. Lastly, because my efficiency was so good, Irish Stouts usually go in the range of 4 to 4.5%. When I made this recipe, I was targeting 4.5%, and because of my efficiency bump, I had to add a half gallon of distilled water to this batch. Okay, to wrap this video up, we can go into appearance, aroma, mouthfeel, and flavor. The first thing we can do is appearance. The appearance on this is definitely a very black, dark color with a tan head, and it does have a reddish hue if you hold it up to a light. Next for aromas. So coffee is definitely the prominent aroma here. You definitely get a lot of roasted grains and a little bit of chocolate as well. The only hop aromas I can pick up on are maybe some earthy notes, but it's very subtle with this as there wasn't a whole lot of hops to add to this batch. Next, we could jump into mouthfeel. There's not a whole lot to add here with mouthfeel. The only thing I would say is it has a medium body and it's quite smooth as well. And lastly is the flavor. So I would say, again, coffee is definitely the dominant flavor with this because of the 10% roasted barley in here. But you do also get a lot of roasted notes in this, and you do also get a slight bitterness as well. There is an unsweetened chocolate note that comes in at the end as well. With hop notes, there isn't a whole lot here. I guess the only thing I would say is maybe it has like an earthy note to it, and it definitely leans towards a drier finish as well. But that about covers it for the dry Irish Stout. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, make sure to like the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. There'll be more content like this coming out in the future. But anyway guys, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.